Hello, and in today's episode of Home Media Minefield, we're going to look at the 4K ultra high def release of Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, and we're going to dig into this right now. Hello, I'm Keith and welcome to another Home Media Minefield, helping you with information to navigate the complexities of home cinema and home media entertainment. And for this special episode covering the 4K version of Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, based on Stephen King's novel of the same name, we're going to focus just on the 4K UHD versions, because this has been released on DVD and Blu-ray numerous times over the years in various different packaging, etc. But this really does feel like, as is what is available right now, the most definitive edition of this. Now, I've already done an unboxing video where I've looked at what exactly is included in this package in terms of posters, booklets, postcards, etc. So please check out that video to find out about that. But today I'm going to look at what's included on the actual discs themselves. Now, first of all, I need to point out that this special 40th anniversary box set does actually have 3 discs, where I believe the regular 4K edition only has 2 discs. Essentially what the difference is the third disc in this includes what they're calling the theatrical cut, or sometimes is referred to as the European cut of the film. Essentially, this was the film that was originally out in the cinemas outside of North America and had about 25 minutes or so cut out to bring it down to 120-minute running length. Now, most of the home media releases since it's been released on DVD back in 2000, 2001, right the way through its 2007 Blu-ray release, re-releases at the cinema, and this 4K release have been what they're calling the extended edition. But that is the normal theatrical edition in the US, so it always gets a little bit confusing with terminology. I won't go into too much depth about what was cut and why, because there are dozens of essays out there on the internet that go into the various versions of The Shining. But with this box set, you do get, if you want to be a completist, you do get both versions of the film. So in other words, you get the extended edition both on 4K and Blu-ray, plus you also get a Blu-ray with the European cut. I hope I've made that clear. I know it can sound somewhat confusing. Okay, so on to the picture quality, and Warner have done a clean-up and a complete remastering, not only for the 4K disc, but also an improved transfer for the Blu-ray as well. So if you've got previous home media editions, be it DVD or the previously released Blu-rays, then you will notice an improvement straight away with the overall picture. Now, of course, the 4K edition is sharper, a better image quality, a lot more detail. Remember, this was originally shot on film, so you will notice a lot more detail. You will also notice a little bit of grain here and there, which is normal with this kind of scan from a film transfer. Also, the colors pop a lot more because, of course, there's high dynamic range involved in this, which means that the brights are brighter and the dark and shadow is darker, essentially. So it is a really, really nice transfer on this. And even if you don't have a 4K player, the Blu-ray transfer on this is also worth the upgrade. As a note as well, the HDR on this supports both Dolby Vision and HDR10+. So Warner have really gone to town in terms of the picture on this, and it's supporting on various 4K TVs and projector setups. Now onto the audio side of things, and this is something where even though the audio is great on this, it is a 5.1 mix. There is no Dolby Atmos, oddly, considering they've done a Dolby Vision disc. They haven't gone and done a Dolby Atmos mix of the audio, but there is, as I said, a very dynamic 5.1 mix included on both the Blu-ray and the 4K disc here. Also oddly absent is the original mono soundtrack that lots of classic films like this usually include, but here you just have the 5.1 option. There is separation and a lot of depth to the mix. Obviously the music is key to this also. So all in all, it's a very good soundtrack on this, but kind of curious that they didn't go and convert it into a full Dolby Atmos track or include the original mono soundtrack. Now in terms of the special features here, unfortunately there is nothing new from previous releases. However, all of the previous special features from other releases have been ported over to this, and they are decent and somewhat comprehensive, so we'll break through exactly what you get here. So on both the 4K and the Blu-ray discs you get an audio commentary by Steadicam operator and inventor Garrett Brown and biographer John Baxter. So between the two of them, there's not much that they don't know about Stanley Kubrick and work on this production. Garrett talks about everything from using the Steadicam in a wheelchair in order to get a slightly lower angle that Kubrick wanted for one of the shots, right the way through to the audio side of things with the carpet and the shiny floors. Goes into stories about that. John Baxter talks a lot about the way Kubrick worked with actors, you know, the fact that he was notorious for over 100 takes in some cases, but the explanation that the way Kubrick looked at it is he would spend years researching a project and then months planning it, and therefore didn't want to be rushed when it would actually come to the filming of it. So that all makes sense, and you know, great to hear these stories from one of our directing greats. It's a very decent commentary. Anybody that's interested in filmmaking in any way and knows The Shining, it's well worth your time to sit and watch this commentary. Next up we get a 30-minute documentary called View from the Overlook, Crafting The Shining. I honestly wish this was longer. It goes very much into the themes of Kubrick's interpretation of Stephen King's work, and there's interviews with many of the cast and crew on this. Diane Johnson, the screenwriter, talks about the adaptation of the book and her conversations with Stanley Kubrick about changing some of it to suit the screen and to suit his vision. Producer Jan Harlan talks about how with Kubrick's work he never necessarily wanted to explain everything and wanted to leave certainly the story of The Shining with some ambiguity towards the end. Production designer Roy Walker talks about building sets versus using locations and how they tried to marry these two to create Kubrick's very specific vision. And there's some great stories from Jack Nicholson about working with Stanley Kubrick, which is well worth a watch. And it also includes interviews from directors Sidney Pollack, William Friedkin, Steven Spielberg, Ernest Dickinson, to name just a few. Interestingly, Spielberg's very honest, and he talks about how obviously he was great friends with Stanley Kubrick, but how many of Stanley Kubrick's films tend to grow on him with time and multiple watches, and how certainly with The Shining he didn't necessarily enjoy it the first time he saw it, but now it's one of his favourite films of all time. So this documentary was produced in 2007, but it's still very relevant to hear people reminiscing about the great Stanley Kubrick in this fashion. Just a note as well that these documentaries are in a 4:3 format, so You will get black bars at the sides of the screen during this, and if you want to know more about aspect ratios, then please check out my recent Home Media Minefield Explained, where I go into more detail on that. Next up is an 18-minute featurette which was filmed at the same time, called Visions of Kubrick. This includes the aforementioned directors from the previous featurette, as well as George Lucas as well included in this one, and a number of cinematographers. They talk about all of Kubrick's career and his diversity of projects and genres over the years. They also talk about him as a photographer and how the use of camera is always very prominent in all of his pieces of work. They talk about how he's always thinking about the grading of the film as well as the actual shooting of it. And it's also great that you actually get some behind the scenes footage included in this as well. To be perfectly honest, I would have preferred both of these featurettes to be a lot longer and be feature length in their style, but what we get here is still very informative and inspiring. Next you get the 35-minute documentary The Making of The Shining, which was filmed on set at the time by Vivian Kubrick, the daughter of Stanley, who was only 17 at the time that she shot this. It's very nice because it shows that it has a lot of behind the scenes interviews with various cast and crew members, but most importantly you get to see Stanley Kubrick directing and doing what he does best. Now this was originally shown on the BBC but has been restored for the home media version, and does also include an audio commentary which I believe Vivian recorded in 2007 to accompany this. The commentary adds a lot of additional meat to the bones, and she really does go out of her way to credit all of the cast and crew that are seen in this and the contributions that they made to her father's work. And she talks about little asides like Stanley playing mood music on set, and how when they created the snow scenes they used polystyrene chips, which he admitted in today's world would not be considered environmentally friendly. It's also interesting that during the documentary she films some of the arguments between Stanley Kubrick and Shelley Duvall, so it's nice to have those captured on film as well. And finally we get a 7.5-minute featurette by one of the composers, Wendy, on working with Stanley Kubrick on both Clockwork Orange and The Shining. She talks about the early development on both films, some of the instruments that were used, and she actually plays some of the unused music cues that were created for both films. And this is kind of a nice way to round off the extras. Now unfortunately, as I said, these extras have all been available before on previous home media releases, so there is nothing brand new here, although as I mentioned at the start, these are very comprehensive and informative. I would have loved a feature-length retrospective, that would have been great, or even if they had included the feature-length documentary Room 237 that looks into various theories around The Shining, that would have been good as well, but that is, I guess, a movie in its own right, which they probably couldn't have included on this set. So that about rounds it out really. For the completists out there, as I said, the 40th anniversary collector's edition is nice to get because you also get that third disc with the international cut, the 2-hour edition of the film, but the extended edition Blu-ray and the 4K are absolutely gorgeous transfers and well worth having in your collection. I will put some links below as to where you can actually get these and other versions of this film for home media. And that brings me to the end of another home media minefield. I hope you found this information useful. If you did, please do like, subscribe and hit that bell icon so that you don't miss anything moving forward. And by all means, please share and spread the word. It all helps. I am releasing weekly reviews on titles, not just new titles but old titles as well. So if there's anything in particular that you'd like me to talk about, then please put that in the comments below as well, and I shall get round to that. I'm also doing unboxing and explained videos as well. So again, any comments or feedback or questions, please put them down below. And that just leaves me to say thank you very much, and I will speak to you at the next Home Media Minefield. Thanks for now. And she talks about little asides like Stanley playing like Stanley playing mute.